What's going on, world? This is your boy Troy. Today we're going to be talking about millennial women and why not to date them, and I'm going to be giving you some facts.
I spit hot fire.
I'm God, bitch.
Look up in the sky, is that a goon or green goblin? None of the above, it's a motherfucking dragon. Super Saiyan 2 to a cell, no problem. You put me in a cell, then you got
Bow down, nigga. I'm God, nigga.
What's going on, world? This is your boy Troy, your friendly neighborhood NGTOW. I am 100% your friend. And before we get into the actual conversation, let me just do some housekeeping. Let me clean some things up for you. I know some of you have noticed that in a few videos past, I was doing some ironing for a green screen. I tried some things out. It's not looking the way I want to by any stretch of the imagination. So I'm just gonna try and clean things up with this handy dandy black background. So we'll work with that for right now. Another thing that was kind of pretty common in the comments, I was kind of getting beat up for it, but so many people kept commenting on my ADD and how I keep going all over the place. So I will do my very best to stay here. I'm here with you. So with that, we'll move forward. One of the things that obviously I want to talk about is statistics. Now, I am not the math guy. I'm not the dude that's gonna sit there and crunch numbers. I'm not the guy that's will sit there and try to meticulously put things together. But look, man, I am educated. I do pride myself on my logic. I've been to college and not just took the lesbian dance classes, but some actual STEM classes as well. Mathematics, statistics, things of that nature. So I feel like I can reasonably look at some statistics and draw rational, logical inferences from the data. And I want to present that. Now, let me just, before we kind of really get into it, another little kind of a personal note. I was actually putting some of this work together. A lot of it was for my own personal benefit. I'm still going through this life like you and everybody else is, and I wanted to be sure. I wanted, I want the facts to be on my side. I don't want to necessarily make just purely emotional decisions. I want to make decisions based on rationality, facts, logic, based on man shit, right? But there was kind of another motive to this, and I know that there's a number of women who actually watch these videos, and it just kind of takes me back. But so if you are a woman, and if you haven't seen the Am I a Woman Hater, you might want to check there. But if not, and you're here, part of the reason for why I wanted to put some of these statistics together, this presentation, well, not really presentation, together, was because I was actually preparing to see a friend, and it is a girl. She's not a girlfriend or whatever, but she is a friend. She, by any stretch of the imagination, she's not an Awalt. She's not somebody that it's like, oh my God, she's she looks good, but she's not an Awalt, right? She's the same as everybody else, but through relationships and you just meeting people, networking, that type of thing, you come across some cool people, and she's one of them, and she thinks the way a lot of, I'll say millennial women, but particularly women think when they kind of get this eye in the sky, pie in the sky fantasies. I want to find the guy that'll complete me and this and that and things of that nature. And so I was kind of preparing things because I know eventually I'm going to run into her again and we might have this talk. And it'd be not, just kind of have some things in the chamber so that way if that talk ever happens, I'll be able to give something to actually help, and I want this to be a channel to be more about actually helping people, whether you are, man or woman. Obviously, look, this is MGTOW, this is mainly a man thing, but like I said, you can't stop. And look, wherever men go, women flow, right? So, I understand that there are going to be women that are going to be watching this So, you know, it's one of those things that, you know, I want to be, like I say, as rational and logical, so that way, you know, when they get triggered, it's not going to be like, oh, you're angry and you hate women. Like, no, chick, there are statistics, right? There are certainly things that, you know, that we can actually point to besides, you know, my inner hatred for the fairer sex. But obviously, look, this is mainly for the fellas, and with that, let's get into it. Now, as I was doing my research, I went through a lot of studies, a lot of graphs, charts, things of that nature, and I found one in particular that I think is going to be pretty I'll say the most relevant for our conversation here. And the reason why, I'll probably put it in I'll put it somewhere. There will be a place. It's probably going to pop up now. I'm probably doing this now in post. It'll pop up, but I'll certainly leave a link to it. And this graph is pretty striking. Now, I think it was taken around 2008. I think that's when they made the cutoff for this. And a reason for that is important, and we'll get to that later. But here is the basics of what I'm talking about, and why I say, particularly for men, why it is disadvantageous for you to date millennial women, or should I say marry millennial women, right? And here's the reason, right? So the general knowledge, the general consensus is that the more men that a woman sleeps with, the less viable she is for marriage, for a number of reasons. But, you know, the more men she sleeps with, the more accustomed to sex she is. Like I say, for women, so let's go into some of the reasons why. For women, you know, sex is more than just sex. You know, for men, we can, you know, we'll fuck anything. You know, that's us. We're men. Women, they have to be more selective. They have to, because, you know, if they let the wrong guy ram them and they end up having his kid, well, then you end up with assholes like me, right? I mean, you end up, we all know the single mom stories, and, well, I don't know, I didn't know he was an asshole, and he just, all right, but I've done a whole nother video and stuff on that. So for them, sex in itself, it almost like it is a relationship. And the more times that a woman commits her body, that she commits herself to a man, that lets a man enter her, it's almost like that's the more relationships that she's been in. And it's something that I find very, very interesting. There's a fly going around somewhere, but it's something I find very interesting because it's almost like tape. And you know what, let me find some tape really quick. There has to be, in the studio somewhere, there has to be some tape. Ah, here we go. All right. All right. Okay. So it's like tape. A woman's vagina is, let me center, find my face, camera, there we go. A woman's vagina is like tape, right? When it starts out, it's very sticky, right? Look, it's on my finger. It's very, very sticky. But when you stick it to something, right, and then you undo it, it's not as sticky. But then you stick it to something else, my jeans per se, right? Take it off, it doesn't stick as well. Or if you try to, you know, put it on that, oh, there we go, it actually sticks. And it's sticking pretty well, actually. let me take that off. But as you can see, right, over time, and this is really sticking pretty well, right? But that, now when I try to stick it to my finger yet again, let me straighten out my background here. Let me smooth that out. But now when I try to stick it to my finger yet again, I have to press infinitely harder, right? Or, matter of fact, even when I don't, let me try it again. Nothing. All right. So that's pretty much the best illustration for sex when it comes to women. That is the way that it works for them. And so when we look at these statistics, you know, and we'll go to the sliding scale here. Now, the study that I'm talking about, they went from what they measured, or they talked to women who have, and they asked them pretty much, okay, how many dudes have you been with? And based on that number, you know, were you able to make it 5 years or more in marriage, right? You know, or should I say, sorry, at least 5 years in marriage. So what did they say? Well, here's how it goes. Women who were virgins at marriage, that means they didn't have any sex until they married their husband. Their statistics are pretty good, around 85. I'll bump it up to 90% to make it better for you, right? Now, women who had sex with their husband before he was their husband. So they were dating, had sex with him, but then they got married, and, you know, obviously now he's the husband, so they're going along with it. It drops a little bit, but it's like 80%. You're still good. You know, and then what you kind of see is that women who have had one partner and then got married to another guy, right? So two partners, and you know, that stat drops to like 60%. Right, it's a dramatic drop. It's almost like the first time that I stuck the tape to that. You know, remember how hard it was to get it off? Like, that's in essence what that was. I just think this wasn't a very sticky material, but certainly when it got to this type of material, it was a lot harder. That's what, like, their first love, their first, you know, that's kind of what that is. And then once we get to 2, it drops to like 50, and then look, the stats are there. You can read into it what you will, but I will say this: from 2 to about 4. I'll push it and say 5, right? 2 to 4, and no, fuck it. 2 to 4, you know, you're at a 50% chance of being with a woman, if you are a woman, then being in a marriage for 5 years, right? So let's think about this now. All these stats that say what when we talk about divorce, who brings up most of the divorces? Women. 70, I say 80. I personally, this is just me, I think it's actually 90%. People are, well, why is that? I mean, if it's 70% on the court documents, then why do you say 90? Well, I honestly say 90 because I think that other 20% that men have filed. It's been because women have done the passive aggressive thing where they keep pushing him and then just withholding sex and just chopping him down and all the things that women do, and they've just continually done that and broke him down to where he just said, fuck it, like, we're done, I can't do this anymore. So now she has plausible deniability and can say, well, you know, things were tough, but I did everything I could to make sure that the relationship was stable, and, you know, he just ended up giving up on me, you know, that type of thing. So, but that's neither here nor there. We know that women bring the most of the divorces, right? And 50% of marriages end in divorce now. So now let's take that statistic. So now if a woman has been with just one guy, 2 guys, 3 guys, 1 guy, 2 guys, 3 guys, 4, I feel like Count Dicula in this motherfucker. But when we really talk about it, and when we really look at this thing here, and like 50% of those women, we're talking about being in a stable relationship for only 5 years. Like, you kind of see the sliding scale. The odds are not very good for you fellas. And here's the thing, it gets worse. So like I said, they talk to these women and they ask them, you know, how many partners have you been with, right? And obviously another thing that I want to also mention is that most of the time we all know that on the whole, women, they also, like, these are the ones that were willing to admit a number, right? So the number that they really messed around with, we really don't know. And at the same time, women have this way, and I mean we all do, but women in particular have this way of what I call technicalities, right? Where let's say that she was in college and while, yeah, I only slept with one guy, yeah, but she sucked like the whole football team off, like the whole basketball team just lined up and just smacked her face with sausage, and but she's only slept with one guy. Right? I mean, technically speaking, I've only had what, like, that's women for you. At the same time, as a dude, you're looking at, you're like, no. You're just like, no. You know, we're talking about actual intercourse. Well, no, and she's not really counting the time that, you know, fucking Jerry finger blasted her on the back of the bus, or the time that you know, all this other, like, she's not counting all of those times, right? Which, let's be honest, a lot of women do, right? So I mean, or we're not talking about a lot of these, you know, quote unquote lesbian relationships or all this weird stuff that's happening now, and that's another thing that I want to cover. But so even then those statistics are really, I mean, god dang, it's really telling you something, fellas. But the point I really want to get to is that the time frame for the marriage at hand is only 5 years, right? And that's an important thing to note, because what happens after year 6? What happens after year 7? At the same time, if you live in a state like California, which I happen to do, I think the alimony laws it's like 7 years. So if you make it 7 years, then you're able to file for alimony, and you pretty much get paid just for past pussy work, you know. So fellas, you know, ask yourself, right? You know, so we say 5 years, but at the same time, this isn't counting the women who after 10 years of marriage, after 7, after 12, after 20 or whatever, they're just like, yeah, I'm just not happy anymore. I changed my mind. I'm not this and that. So we're not even talking about happily ever after here. We're only talking about 5 years. So I mean, especially people will get into this thing where they're just like, oh well, I want to find somebody and complete me and go for the rest of my life. And so if she slept with only 3 men, and hopefully, like, because you're assuming you want to, as a man, you want to be like, you know, you don't want to be the highest number, right? You want to be the lowest or whatever. So assuming she's been through these dudes and she has maybe a 50% chance of just making it 5 years. Now, on a long enough time span, that number actually decreases, right? Or should I say the divorce rate increases? Yeah, you know what I'm talking about. Right? But it gets worse, right? And so I think another thing that I really want to talk about is, so we talked about how this survey is a little bit dated, right? I think if you look at it, you look at the numbers, well, that was only in 2008. And I want to kind of point out here that they were doing these statistics on a generation past, a generation that actually valued marriage a lot more than this one does. Because I mean, in 2007, 2008, like I was what, 17, 16, 18 or what, I was still in like my teen years or whatever. So there wasn't enough time to even calculate a 5-year marriage for me. And now that my generation, now that we are older, and now that we're taking that place, that number is just, look, it's gotten worse. So let's look at some of the reasons why. I mean, it's no secret, it's no joke that these women now are a lot more promiscuous than they've ever been. Like I said, look, if she's had four, I'm not even talking about a whole hand. She hasn't even had a whole hand up her. Wait, that's not. I was gonna go somewhere with that. That's that's not where I wanted to go. But if she hasn't even had, her if this is her number count, if just 4 is her number count, and she has a 50% chance. Like, I don't want to say most. You know what? Most of these women, they've had that number before they're done with college. If I'm wrong, let me know. Right? Most of these women, some of them, they've had this number before they're even out of high school. And look, I'm just being honest, man. I'm doing work in the community, and I, used to be a drug and alcohol counselor, all kinds of things. I want to go over my whole resume, but I'm being honest with you. Some of these girls, maybe a smaller number, but look, some of these girls, they're hitting this number in middle school. It's that real. And now, obviously, a smaller number. I've known a few, and I will say a few. It is a few, right? That have hit this number before they're even out of elementary school. Yes, I know. Now, look, that is an extreme case. I'll give you that. Those are the fringe cases. But certainly, by the time in this generation, this millennial generation, certainly by the time that a woman is 20, 22, she's been through at least 4, right? So even if you are number 5, right? So even then, ask, well, what's your number? And sometimes they'll lowball it. Oh, I've only had 6, or I've only been with 5. It doesn't matter. Like, even then, if you're talking about a stable relationship, if she says anything more than 3, right, then you're done. I mean, even then, let's look at this. If 50%, that's 50-50, right? But even when we do come from like a scholastic background, even when we do come from a place where, your percentages really matter. Well, look, I come from a place where, what is it? 100% is an A, 90% is an A minus, 80% is a B, 70% is a C, 60% is a D, and anything below that is failing. Even then, there were times like that, and I don't want to brag, but my GPA was like a 3.6 or something like that. It was above it because they told me, okay, look, technically speaking, if you get a D, it's still considered failing. But they said, look, man, even if you get a C, so in some cases that's considered failing. So try and get B's and above. Like if you're at an 80%, consider you like 1% away from failing. And I'm just like, oh, okay, right? Because if I want to go to different colleges or do different things, I mean, have the options open. Okay, fine, just keep it above at least a B to A range, and that's what I did. So when I look at 50%, and you say, well, it's half and no, that is failing. I mean, think about this. The statistics say if she's had only one partner, and they'll be right here for you. If she's had only one partner and then meets you, and you end up being the love of her life and all this other good stuff, whoa, yay, it's so wonderful, it's so perfect, right? She has one partner, one slimy cock in her, and then she meets you, mate. That number drops to 60%. 60%. So you're telling me, which is, it's non-satisfactory, right? So, which is, look, like I say, some would argue is still failing. So you're telling me, so we talk about no waltz, right? Not all women are like that. And look, I understand we're talking about behavior and instincts and all this other good stuff, but just follow me here. You're telling me that you are going to find a millennial woman that's only had sex with one guy. One. You're going to find me that. That's what you're going to do. Okay. All right. Look, they're out there. And if that's you, good. And like I say, I'm not counting, and like I say, I'm not even counting the women that, like I say, well, I've only technically had one, but you know, like I say, the whole football team has ran, you know, just slapped meat on her face. Like, I'm not talking about that. You're telling me you're like that. Look, if you can find that, that's what you got, it's cool. That is cool, right? Good for you. And even then the stats are still not on your side. But yeah, fellas, I'm trying to think if I have any other points that I just want to, you know, get off my chest, but that's pretty much what I got for right now. Yeah. So here's what we're gonna do. We're gonna wrap up here. If I think of anything else, I'll probably make a part 2 to this. But with that, look, I want to thank you for coming by. Thank you for supporting the channel. If you want to support it financially, monetarily, I'm setting up a Patreon or a PayPal account, but don't worry about that now. Head on over to the Enlightenment Manual. It's the greatest self-discovery system in the world. Lifetime money back guarantee. If you don't figure out something amazing and mind-blowing that'll help you change your life, you get your money back, no questions asked. Also, heading over to the Troy Mason Exchange, where you know, there's a lot of great health products, a lot of great things that help you, you know, get your health right. And with that, I've been your boy Troy. I'm your friend, yeah, and I'll see you on the other side.
The dick was good. But it's the only problem, though. She said the dick was so good that as she started rocking, she just got into it, and all of a sudden, she said something just hit her. Bam! All upside his head. Just slapped him. Dick will make you slap somebody. So y'all need to remember that. That's what I'm trying to deal with. The fact.
More like constipated, cause you know I do not take shit. Maybe I need give shit. Give this misfit. Like a small condom on this dick. Words are like bullets and my bullets go ballistic. Beat hit hard, Ray Lewis, hold a hit stick.
You gon' get this work, nigga.